What is up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to do a different style of video, and it's a style of video that I have been desperate to do on my channel. Back in the day, I used to watch so many top 10, top 5 videos, and I always thought to myself, I would love to get involved with this style. And over the past week or so, I have been speaking to all of you on Discord, I have been speaking to you on the YouTube community section, on Twitter, and obviously I am a huge Resident Evil fan, and I really wanted to talk to you all about some of the worst bosses that we have encountered throughout the franchise. So today, I'm going to be counting down our top 5 worst Resident Evil bosses. Now, a lot of these will be very much my opinion. I just want to throw that out there. I know some people get kind of funny with these kind of videos where they're like, that's not how I think, that is not what the community thinks, blah, 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 blah. So please just take this as my research from my subscribers, but if you have a different list, please leave it in the comment section. I'm so excited to actually read everyone's list that they have for some of the worst Resident Evil bosses. Based on what everyone was saying, I was finding that a lot of people were kind of hating on Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6, and a lot of people actually on Resident Evil 7. And while a lot of those games do have some pretty ridiculous bosses, I don't want to just, target those games specifically, because there are some bosses in the old school Resident Evil games where you're struggling with the camera, you're struggling with the controls, and it's just an absolute nightmare. So I wanted to pick at least one boss from a certain game, but I didn't want it to be like 5 from a couple of games, Because yes, I'm sure we could probably just have the list being Resi 5 and Resi 6, because some of those bosses are absolutely ridiculous. In at number 5, the comms officer boss from Resident Evil Revelations 1. Now this boss comes very early within Resident Evil Revelations 1. You're still trying to find your way around the boat, you are still struggling to get ammo, you are coming to grips with the enemies, and then suddenly you are thrown into this boss with this absolutely massive, ugly, horrible thing. You have little to no ammo, if you're me playing the game, that is. You're also surrounded by tons of other enemies that don't even have to be standing next to you to do damage. They can throw things at you, preferably throw body parts at you. Very lovely indeed. You can't actually get too close to the comms officer because he will just one-hit kill you, so it's a nightmare. And a lot of the time, we all just kind of cheese this boss, let's be honest, by jumping back and forward through the window, allowing the boss to then have to chase us round back the way. And yeah, it was just one of those bosses where every single time I play Resident Evil Revelations, I'm always like, oh, here we go. I absolutely hate this boss, but we're gonna have to do it to progress. And there was a lot of people complaining about this boss. There was actually a lot of people talking about quite a few bosses in Resident Evil Revelations. Obviously, you've got the blonde chick as well that you have to fight a little bit later on in the game. But out of all of them, people definitely seem to be in agreement that the comms officer was just an absolutely frustrating boss, especially so early on in Revelations 1. In at number 4, Resident Evil 6. Yes, of course, Resident Evil 6 was obviously gonna make this list. It had some of the worst bosses throughout the entire franchise, but there is one Resident Evil 6 boss that forever stood out to me, and that is in Chris's campaign, the gigantic BOW towards the end. Now, I don't know about you, but when I play games, I like to play them solo for my first playthrough anyway, and I played Chris's campaign solo for the first time, and I never really had an issue. I always found that the AI, it tended to be on my side. Piers wasn't too bad, until suddenly I got to this boss here, and you really need Piers to do as he is told so that you can progress in this game. Now, obviously this video does contain spoilers. Please have played these games before you watch this video. So basically, at this point, Piers has become infected, and he has power coming through his arm, and he is supposed to zap the giant BOW. But if you were playing as Chris and you were playing solo, I always found that sometimes Piers just didn't want to do anything except run around. And I gotta actually say, I never finished this game solo. I ended up having to co-op this game because this boss gave me so so much trouble. Overall, I felt like Chris's campaign, it was a lot of fun, it was quite hectic, I enjoyed it, but it was just when I got to this boss here, and even the lead up to this boss where you're having to do quick time events and running up the side of a wall, and oh, it was just an absolute nightmare. I hated this boss so much. And the funny thing is it's not necessarily that it's a difficult boss, it's just very frustrating if you're playing this game solo and if you're having ammo situations, which I always have ammo situations in Resident Evil games, and yeah, I absolutely hated this boss. The Resident Evil list would not be complete without this boss, and I was sorely tempted to have this boss as my #1 worst boss, but there is like one that's way lamer than this one. The Bat from Resident Evil 0. Now, while this boss may seem like, oh great, there's a save point right in front of this boss, you know, that's great, I don't even have to run very far. Oh, it's got ammo in the room before I even have to go in. Oh, that's great. Except, it's not. It's really not. Every person I spoke to over the past couple of weeks, the first boss they said that they hated the most was the Resident Evil 0 Bat boss. It's so frustrating. I know for me, when I actually got to this point on my first playthrough, both of my characters were in a red caution, and you are gonna take some hits in this boss. That is just non-negotiable. It is gonna happen. So while you are fighting against the camera angle, the fact that you're trying to lock onto the bat so that you can actually hit this thing before it comes and attacks you, the more you hit the bat, the more you then get baby bats coming, and obviously they can distract you, they can hit you a lot quicker, they can dent your aim. Oh my god, this boss sucks. Now the thing is, I have seen people do this boss so well, I have seen them do it first time, but not me. No, not only that, the boss always decides to pick you up, take you on a little ride around the room, and it's just, it is absolute hell. This boss is absolutely hectic, and it doesn't need to be like this. Why did it do this? I mean, the game is not designed for a boss like this. It's just not. I didn't have a rocket launcher at this point, okay? So I chose to do this boss as Billy because Billy could take a few more hits than Rebecca. But honestly, there's a lot of bosses in Resident Evil 0 that I hated. The frogs, especially hated the frogs. But the Bat boss just takes the biscuit. It absolutely takes the biscuit. In at #2, oh, this one was definitely going to be on the list. And I know a lot of you on the YouTube community section are going to be like, yep, I remember watching her struggle through that. I never thought I would even finish Code Veronica. But in at #2, the Tyrant boss fight from Code Veronica on the plane. Do I need to say any more? Do I really need to say any more? So I know there's going to be a lot of people in the comment section on this just now that are going to be like, oh, that fight is so easy. All you need is a ton of ammo. You need this, you need that. Again, people playing this game for the first time, they don't know what's going to come, okay? And if they're not playing it on YouTube and they don't have anyone to guide them, to help them, they don't know what's about to come. And I know for me, I wasn't really reading my comment section, and I got up to this boss. I had little to no ammo. I couldn't get close enough to knife him. The actual space in itself, it's so stupid. So the whole point of this boss is to try and push the Tyrant off the back, but you have to do a certain amount of damage before you can even do anything on this boss. And just you can see from the video that there is little to no space. The controls are clunky. Okay, it's an old school Resident Evil game. The controls are going to be clunky. And just somehow managing to dodge any of the Tyrant's attacks in such a close space, to me, it was like near impossible. Absolutely near impossible. I know that this is one of the most hated boss fights in the entire franchise, and that's funny because so many people always say, no, the worst bosses are from 4 upwards. No, they ain't. Okay, this is #2 on my list. I will forever hate the Tyrant boss fight, and I will never, never play Code Veronica ever again. Now, the #1 spot is #1, not because it's difficult, not because it's like Code Veronica style where it's like a closed space or anything like that. It is simply #1 because it is the worst, most lamest boss fight in any Resi, and every single time I come up to this point in Resident Evil 5, I'm like, this is so lame. So towards the end of Resident Evil 5, we find out all about Wesker, we find out all about Blonde Jill, and then for whatever reason, you have to waste 7 minutes of your life just hiding from Wesker. I'll give you 7 minutes, that's all you're gonna get, 7 minutes. And it's like, it is the longest 7 minutes of your life. And it is beyond pointless. It's not fun, it's not exciting, so you get two choices. You can run around, you can collect all the gold, you can avoid Jill, because if you shoot Jill and you kill her, it's game over, so you can't even shoot Jill, you just have to ignore her, avoid her. Or the other one is that you can actually take out Wesker before the 7 minutes, but I think the only good thing you get from that is an achievement or a trophy or anything like that. But there is no satisfaction in this boss whatsoever. What people love about bosses is the struggle and then the reward after defeating the boss. But this boss in Resident Evil 5 is ridiculously pointless. It's just, I hate it. I hate it so much, and I'm so glad that there were so many people in the community that was like, that is the most pointless, lamest, worst boss fight in like the franchise of Resident Evil. Now obviously there is like harder boss fights than this, of course there is worse boss fights based on the difficulty and things like that, but when it comes to the lame award, it definitely goes to that Wesker boss fight in Resident Evil 5. Now don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Resident Evil 5. I love the fact that Chris punches a boulder into lava. Okay, it's ridiculous, but I absolutely love it. I'm not hating on any of these games whatsoever. I have played them all. I love Resident Evil. It's one of my favorite franchises. I would love to know what your worst bosses are, and it can be from difficulty, it can be if they're just lame and you just think that they shouldn't be in the game whatsoever, but this is what we all discussed on my YouTube community page. I've had so much fun reminiscing about some of these bosses, but as I say, Code Veronica, I hate that game. I will forever hate that game. I know that that is some people's favorites, and that is okay, but it's not mine. Resi 3 is my favorite. So please, go ahead, let me know in the comment section, what is your worst, least favorite boss out of any of the Resident Evil games that you have played? I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you would like me to do any other top 5s or top 10s or anything like that, please leave those suggestions also in the comment section. And as for me, I will see you all in the next video. Bye!